It was just another ordinary day at the police station, but then the heavy front doors swung open and in entered a tiny stray puppy, trembling and whimpering. At first, the officers laughed in surprise, but their smiles quickly faded when the little one raised a paw as if begging for help. One officer knelt down, his heart tightening as he noticed something unusual clutched in the puppy's collar. What he discovered in that moment brought the entire station to silence and left everyone in the room fighting back tears. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the police station, casting soft rays across desks piled with paperwork. The sound of ringing phones, shuffling papers, and the steady crackle of the radio filled the air. Officers exchanged nods as they sipped their coffee, preparing for another day of routine tasks. Outside, traffic bustled, horns honked, and the city moved forward as usual. Inside, however, time seemed slower. Another day of reports, patrol schedules, and quiet conversations. Nothing unusual had happened yet, and no one expected anything out of the ordinary to disturb the still rhythm of the morning. The kind of morning where nothing stood out until the sound of heavy doors creaking open suddenly broke the familiar routine. Heads lifted. Everyone turned, expecting a civilian or perhaps another officer arriving late. But instead, silence fell. The officers' eyes widened as they realized who, or rather what, had entered. Small paws pattered nervously across the tiled floor. A tiny golden puppy stood in the middle of the room, its fur dirty, its body trembling, eyes wide with desperation. The room, once filled with chatter and laughter, grew still. No one spoke, their attention locked on the fragile creature who looked both frightened and determined. None of them knew it yet, but this uninvited visitor was about to change their day and their lives forever. The puppy stood frozen in the middle of the room, its tiny chest rising and falling rapidly with nervous breaths. Its paws left faint marks on the polished tiles, and its ears twitched at every sound. For a moment, the officers simply stared, unsure of what to make of this strange arrival. One officer chuckled softly, breaking the silence. "Well, looks like we've got ourselves a new recruit," he joked, drawing a ripple of laughter from the others. But behind the humor, curiosity flickered in their eyes. Why had this frightened little animal come running into a police station? The puppy whimpered, its voice thin and weak, then lifted one paw as if pleading. It wasn't the playful energy of a stray wandering in by accident. There was something deliberate about the way it looked around the room, as if searching for someone to understand. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. One leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "He doesn't look lost," he said quietly. "He looks like he needs something." The words lingered heavily in the room. For a place used to emergencies, this felt different, softer but no less urgent. Something about the puppy's eyes unsettled them. Slowly the animal shuffled forward, its nails clicking lightly against the floor. The officers instinctively leaned back in their chairs, giving it space, all except one who crouched lower, watching carefully. The puppy's eyes locked on him, filled with something between fear and hope. Then, with a trembling whimper, it took another hesitant step and sat down directly in front of him. The room grew silent again. The little creature had chosen someone, as if begging to be heard. None of the officers laughed now. Whatever had brought this puppy here, it was no accident. The little puppy trembled as it sat before the officer, its eyes wide, shimmering with unspoken desperation. It lifted its paw again, pressing it gently against his boot, as if begging for help. The gesture silenced the room completely. This wasn't random wandering, it was a cry for attention. The officer slowly crouched, his hand extended but careful, not wanting to startle the fragile creature. The puppy sniffed his fingers cautiously, then whimpered again, its tail tucked tightly beneath its body. The sound was soft but heavy, as though carrying a story it couldn't speak in words. Everyone leaned in closer. Its fur was dirty, matted in places, and a faint scratch lined its side, hinting at struggles endured outside. The officer's chest tightened as he studied the pup more closely. "You've been through something, haven't you, little one?" he whispered under his breath. The puppy responded by nudging its head gently against his hand, desperate for reassurance. Around the room, hardened officers who were used to dealing with crime and chaos felt something stir inside them. The sight of this helpless life, pleading in silence, tugged at their hearts in a way few cases ever had. One officer murmured, "He's not just lost, he's asking us for help." Heads nodded slowly, the truth clear in the puppy's trembling frame and pleading eyes. The pup shifted slightly, letting out a soft cry before pressing closer against the crouching officer. It was as if he had chosen his protector, trusting that someone here would understand. The weight of the moment hung heavy. A stray dog seeking help was rare enough, but the way this puppy begged was different. Something about it told them this was only the beginning of a story they could never have anticipated. The officer slowly lowered himself onto one knee, bringing his face closer to the trembling puppy. His colleagues watched in silence, their earlier laughter gone, replaced by anticipation. "Hey there, little one," he whispered gently, his voice soft enough to calm rather than scare. The puppy tilted its head, ears twitching at the sound of his tone. For the first time, its tail gave a hesitant wag. The officer extended his hand, palm open, allowing the animal to decide. After a moment's pause, the puppy pressed its tiny nose against his fingers, choosing trust over fear. A ripple passed through the room. The connection was instant, delicate yet powerful. The puppy leaned in further, nudging its head into the officer's palm, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. The officer stroked its fur slowly, feeling the dirt tangled in its coat, but also the warmth beneath. "You came to the right place," he murmured, the words carrying more weight than he expected. Around them, the other officers exchanged knowing looks. Hardened men who faced criminals daily now stood, moved by something so small, so fragile, yet so profoundly pure. It wasn't just a stray, they all sensed it. Then the puppy did something unexpected. It pawed at the officer's leg, insistent, as though trying to draw his attention to something more. Curious, he leaned closer, noticing for the first time the faint outline of a collar hidden beneath its messy fur. The buckle was old, the leather frayed, and something small dangled from it. His brow furrowed as he brushed the fur aside. The room held its breath. The puppy hadn't just come for comfort, it had come with a secret. And the officer, now fully invested, was determined to uncover what that secret might be. The officer carefully shifted the puppy onto his lap, brushing away the tangled fur around its neck. Beneath the dirt and loose hairs, he spotted a small, battered collar. It was barely holding together, the leather cracked and worn thin. Dangling from it was a tiny metal tag, so scratched and faded it was almost invisible. His fingers trembled as he turned it over, wiping away the grime with his thumb. Round him, the other officers leaned in closer, curiosity sharpening the silence. Whatever this puppy carried, it was more than a simple stray's mark. It was a clue. As he rubbed the surface, faint letters began to emerge. The officer squinted, his brow furrowing as he read aloud in a hushed tone. "If you're reading this, please help." The room froze. Those words weren't an address or a name, they were a plea. The officers exchanged stunned looks, the weight of the message settling like a stone in their chests. The puppy whimpered again, as if confirming the urgency. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a lost animal. It was about someone, or something, connected to this small, fragile creature in desperate need of rescue. The officer's grip tightened on the tag, his heart pounding. "There's more," he whispered, tilting it toward the light. Underneath the plea, barely legible, was a scrawled set of numbers. A phone number? An address? The officers gathered closer, muttering among themselves. One pulled out his notepad, another grabbed a radio. The puppy, still trembling, pressed into the officer's chest as though trusting him to act. The station's energy shifted instantly from curiosity to urgency. This wasn't coincidence. The puppy had come here for a reason. And now, The responsibility of uncovering the truth rested in their hands. The officer held the tag closer to the light, his breath catching as the full message came into focus. The words were etched unevenly, as though scratched in haste, but their meaning was clear. "Please take care of him. I can't anymore. He's all I had left." The room fell silent. Officers who faced danger daily, men hardened by crime and tragedy, now stood speechless before a tiny puppy with a desperate plea hanging from his collar. The weight of those words crushed them all. Someone, somewhere, had loved this dog and lost everything in the process. The puppy whimpered again, pressing its small head into the officer's chest, as though it understood the sorrow behind the message. One of the officers swallowed hard, his voice breaking as he muttered, "Who would write something like that?" Another shook his head slowly. "Not someone careless," he replied. "Someone who had no choice." The realization cut deep. This wasn't abandonment born of neglect, it was heartbreak. The man or woman who wrote those words had left their last piece of love in the world behind, hoping someone kind would find it. And now here they were. Tears pricked the corners of more than one officer's eyes. The puppy's arrival no longer felt random. It felt guided, as if fate had led him straight into their arms. The officer holding him whispered, "You did the right thing, little guy. You found us." The dog gave a faint wag of his tail, the first sign of relief since entering the station. The message had broken them, yes, but it had also bound them to a new responsibility. Whatever pain this puppy had carried through those doors, they knew one thing for certain: he would never carry it alone again. The officers gathered around a computer, typing in the faded phone number scratched beneath the message. After several failed attempts, one connection finally went through. The details revealed a heartbreaking story. The puppy had belonged to a woman who had recently lost her battle with illness. Alone and without family, she had left a note for whoever found him, begging them to give her beloved companion a future she no longer could. The collar tag was her final act of love, a silent hope that her little friend wouldn't be left to face the world without kindness. As the officers pieced together the story, their hearts sank deeper. They learned neighbors had seen the woman carried away in an ambulance weeks earlier, leaving the dog outside her home. Since then, the puppy had wandered the streets, hungry, frightened, and desperate. His tiny body bore the signs of hardship, scratches, dirt, and weight loss from days of fending for himself. Yet through all of it, he had clung to the last gift she gave him, that collar with its message, a lifeline to compassion. And somehow, against all odds, it had led him here to safety. The room was heavy with silence. The officers, who were used to chasing criminals and solving cases, now stood humbled by a story of love and loss etched onto a tiny piece of metal. The puppy, curling into the officer's arms, let out a soft sigh as if finally unburdened. His past was filled with sorrow, but his journey had carried him to the one place where people were trained never to ignore a cry for help. And as the officers looked at him, they realized his story wasn't ending here. It was only just beginning. The officer holding the puppy looked around the room, his colleagues' faces mirroring the same unspoken thought. They had uncovered the truth. They knew the pain this little one had endured, and now what happened next was up to them. Slowly he stood, cradling the puppy against his chest. "We can't let him go back out there," he said firmly. A murmur of agreement spread across the room. Tough men who spent their days enforcing the law now stood united in one gentle decision. This stray wasn't just a case file. He was family now. Another officer stepped forward, offering a small smile. "He came to us for help. That means we're the ones who have to give it." Heads nodded, some with tears still in their eyes. Papers rustled as someone pulled adoption forms from a drawer, while another officer rummaged for a blanket to wrap around the shivering pup. The atmosphere, once filled with routine chatter, now carried the weight of commitment. This was no longer about a station and a stray. It was about loyalty, trust, and keeping a silent promise made by someone who loved this dog until her last breath. The puppy wagged his tail faintly as he was passed from one pair of arms to another, each officer offering a gentle pat, a reassuring word. It was as if the entire station had collectively adopted him, each vowing to protect him in their own way. The officer who first knelt down leaned close and whispered, "You're safe now, little guy. You'll never be alone again." The puppy licked his chin softly, sealing the bond. In that moment, the decision was clear. This wasn't just an act of kindness, it was destiny. The police station had gained a new member. The very next morning, the station felt different. Where the clatter of radios and shuffling papers once dominated, now soft paw steps echoed across the tiled floor. The puppy, freshly bathed and wrapped in a small blue blanket, trotted happily between desks. Officers who were once buried in paperwork now paused to smile as the little one sniffed their boots or tugged gently at a shoelace. The mood was lighter, warmer, as though the station itself had been given new life. The puppy wagged his tail proudly, no longer trembling with fear, but beaming with trust in his newfound protectors. Outside in the courtyard, the officer who had first knelt down tossed a small tennis ball across the pavement. To everyone's delight, the puppy chased after it, clumsy paws sliding on the concrete before triumphantly returning with the ball in his mouth. Laughter filled the air, echoing louder than the sirens in the distance. The station, once only a place of discipline and duty, now carried the sound of play and joy. Passers-by slowed to watch, smiling at the sight of hardened officers crouching down, cheering like children as the little pup bounded happily back and forth. As the days stretched on, the puppy curled up on a folded police jacket by the front desk, his tiny chest rising and falling in peaceful sleep. Officers passing by lowered their voices, unwilling to disturb him, a tenderness they rarely showed in their line of work. The dog had found safety, love, and belonging within these walls. In return, he had given the station something priceless: hope. His new beginning wasn't just about a home. It was about healing hearts that didn't even know they needed saving. The station wasn't the same anymore. It was better. Days turned into weeks, and the little puppy became more than just a guest. He became family. Officers began bringing in toys, treats, and even blankets from home. His presence transformed the atmosphere of the station. Arguments softened, stressful days felt lighter, and moments of laughter became more frequent. For men and women accustomed to facing danger, crime, and hardship, the puppy was a reminder of innocence and trust. The message on his tag, once heartbreaking, now felt like a fulfilled promise. He had been searching for safety, and he had found it in the most unlikely of places. Visitors to the station often paused in surprise when they saw the pup lounging behind the desk or padding around the lobby. "Whose dog is this?" they would ask with a smile. The officers always gave the same answer: "He's ours." The story of how he wandered in soon spread beyond the walls of the station, touching hearts in the community. Neighbors brought food, children drew pictures of the police puppy, and people began to see the station not only as a place of authority, but also as a place of compassion. The dog had changed more lives than anyone expected. Late one evening, as the puppy dozed peacefully beside him, the officer who first knelt down reflected on the journey. He thought about the trembling creature who had walked through their doors, carrying the weight of loss, and about the note that broke them all. Now, looking at the same puppy curled in safety, he realized the lesson was simple, yet profound. Sometimes the ones who need saving are the ones who end up saving us. The station hadn't just given the puppy a second chance. He had given them one too. And that was a miracle none would forget.